Good day everyone! Welcome to Teaching Science in Elementary Grade, and I am Dr. Kate Danoco, your student teacher for today's lesson. So before we formally start a discussion for today, let's have first a recap to your previous lesson, which it talks about nature of science. So to sum up everything, you already know that science works in a particular way. Science needs evidence to logically explain things around us, and also science is affected by the culture of the time. So learning about the natural world is a work in progress. So remember class that it is important to understand that scientific knowledge and theories may change over time as more information about a phenomenon are collected. So although there is a scientific method of learning about the natural world, one must be flexible in one's thinking. So take note class that it is important to respect scientific methods of gathering evidence and rechecking data. Understood? And now allow me to introduce to you our topic for today, which is teaching basic science process skills.
When we interact with our surroundings, we are implementing these 6 science process skills such as observation, communication, measurement, classification, inference, and lastly, prediction. Class, as a future teacher, it is your responsibility to help your children develop these skills because it helps children to become active learners. These skills enable them in formulating questions and help them discovering the answers. And now class, each of these science process skills will be discussed one by one in this video. So we will tackle first the observation. In observing, we use our 5 senses. What are those 5 senses? The 5 senses are the sight, smell, touch, hearing, and lastly, the taste. Observing is the most basic science process skills because this involves exploring looks like color, shape, and size, textures, temperature, taste, and smells or others. Again class, that observation is information you gather by using your 5 senses. You make an observation when you hear a sound. You make an observation when you see a bird, what color of the bird. You make an observation when you touch, smell, or taste an orange. What is the texture of the orange? What does it smell? What does it taste? For example, class, using the sense of sight. What did you see on your way to school? Using the sense of smell, explore the smell of the different perfume. Using the sense of touch, differentiate the texture of the sponge and the steel wool. In the hearing, listen and identify sounds of the things that fall on the tabletop like coins, keys, sticks, and books. And lastly, using the sense of taste, what is the taste of the sugar? Take note class that we see with our eyes, we smell with our nose, we listen with our ears, we taste with our tongue, and we touch with our skin. And our brain receives signals from each of these organs and interprets them to give a sense of what's happening around us. And that's what we call observation. Understood? And now let's go to the next science process skills, which is the communication. Communication. Communicating is a process of letting other people know what we are doing and thinking. We communicate in science by speaking, reading, and writing. Same also in our daily lives class. We communicate with our loved ones, families, and friends by speaking, reading, and writing, and even texting and chatting. Right, class? Observing and communicating go hand in hand. This is because a person must communicate in order to share one's observation. It is important to use clear, accurate, and complete descriptions in communicating, including descriptions of color, size, temperature, textures, and others. For example, class, describe what you see when you use a magnifying lens. How can you describe what you see when you use a magnifying lens? So first thing you do is observation. After that, you will describe what you see when you use a magnifying lens to your classmate and friends. By that matter, you are communicating, and that's the process of communication. Understood? Remember, class, that communicating allows us to share our experience, ideas, thoughts, and opinions. And now, let's proceed to the next science process skills, which is the measurement. Measurement. Measurement is defined as the act of measuring or the size of something. We measure height, weight, length, volume, temperature, and density. Remember, class, that when we measure, we use numbers. We ask how much, how many, what size, and how long, and we need the answers to be in numbers. But it is important not just to mention the number that tells us how long, how heavy, how big, but how much or how many, but always include the unit of measure that we use, like meters, pounds, kilos, grams, ounce, cups, spoons, liters, inches, feet, and so on. Class, bear in mind that when teaching a very young learners about measurement, it is enough to talk about big and small or heavy and light. However, we should consider using the same material, same object, and same color of an object, so that the only thing changing is its size. If we are comparing big and small, in the same way, if we are talking about heavy and light, everything else should remain the same. And that's what we call isolation of stimulus. The reason is to make sure we do not confuse the little children about size, weight, or length with other properties such as colors, texture, or kind of material or object. And there are two ways of measuring: unconventional ways of measuring and conventional ways of measuring. Unconventional ways of measuring, also known as non-standard measurement, like measuring something by using one's hand, one's feet, or any object such as coins, paper clips, or a piece of string measuring. While the conventional ways of measuring, children start using with inch blocks when learning how to measure how long an object is as a concrete representation of what 1 inch really is. Take note, class, that older children can start learning about the use of inch rulers. Other units of measurement can be introduced to children as they get older. Other instruments such as meter sticks, measuring cups, measuring spoons, weighing scales, and platform balance can eventually be introduced to children by doing activities using this instrument that range from simple to complex, like when measuring ingredients for baking or cooking, or when measuring shoulder length in order to buy a shirt, among others. Understood? And now, let's proceed to the next basic science process skills, which is the classification. Classification is arranging or sorting objects into groups on the basis of a common property that they have. One way to classify things is by placing a rank or order based on one property. Take note, class, that classifying is to arrange or organize according to class or category. Like, for example, when we arrange or organize our clothes, we are classifying them. As a future teacher, we are very interested in observing and collecting facts. Since there are overwhelming facts gathered, we divide them according to classes, subclasses, and so forth. And class, classifying is something that people do almost every day. Like, for example, shops classifying their goods to suit a specific purpose. We classify our students for the purpose of their learning. Scientists classify animals and plants for the purpose of the study. Understood? Another form of classification is binary classification or multi-stage classification. In a binary classification, one property is mentioned and object is divided into two groups. For example, Given a basket of fruits, you can classify them as round fruits like guava, and fruits that are not round like banana. Another property is fruits with one big seed inside, like mango or avocado, and fruits with many seeds inside like guava and orange. Further along the way, you can classify the remaining fruits until you identify all the fruits in the basket. This is similar to classifying different organisms according to different kingdom, or classifying animals according to different classes and animals. Understood? And now, let's proceed to the next science process skills, which is the inference. Inference is a conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning. We infer when we try to figure out why and how an event happened, but we are not able to observe the event directly as it happened in the past. Just like in a crime investigation class, we try to examine evidence or clues that we find in a crime scene and try to figure out how the crime happened, who did it, and why. Another example is you saw your neighbor wearing a bandage on his right leg. What can you infer? So probably he or she got an accident. Understood? Take note, class, that when we make inference, we are trying to offer explanations or interpretations of what pieces of evidence we see, but we did not really observe the event as it was happening. Did you get me? And now, let's proceed to the last science process skills, which is the prediction. Prediction. A prediction is what someone thinks will happen. So a prediction is a statement about the future. When we predict, we offer our best guess on what might happen in the future based on facts or pieces of evidence. So the difference between inference and prediction is inference is past and prediction is future. We are making a forecast or what we might observe on the future. For example, class, meteorologists who predict weather use maps and data from weather instruments. The meteorologist applies his or her current knowledge to predict the effect of a variable, either independent or dependent. Another example is the amount of fertilizer affects the yield of rice plants. Then our prediction can be, if I increase the amount of fertilizers I use for rice plants, then the rice plants will have more yield. Understood? Take note, class, that if what we find out agrees with our initial guess, then our thinking must be valid. If results turns out to be different from our initial guess, then perhaps we should change our thinking. Understood? And those are the 6 basic science process skills. Take note, class, that when learning about the world around us, basic science process skills must be developed. Remember that the skills we discussed today can be developed even at a young age. As a future teacher, you should incorporate opportunities for students to utilize and harness science process skills when creating a lesson plan. You should add to the lesson plan some activities that can make the students observe, use the different senses, describe what they observe, share the questions that they have, and explain what they did in their experiments and their results. Activities that give students opportunity to measure things, activities that allow students to classify things and reason out why they make such classifications, and activities that allow students to make inference and predictions before, during, and after doing experiment. Understood? And that's all for today. I hope you learned something. Thank you and God bless.